first call of business is, I guess, a call of the roll. Madam Clerk.
Sure. Mayor Rilling,
Here.
Mr. Abrams,
Here.
Mr. Camacho,
Here.
Mr. Freyer,
Here.
Mr. Jelleret,
Here.
Mr. Casimis.
He will not be here.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. We have 5. We have a quorum.
Okay. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the December 6th regular meeting. I take it everyone has had a chance to review the minutes.
Yes, so moved, Mr. Troy.
All right, Troy moves the item. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions? All right, hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes of the December 6th regular meeting as presented in our packets, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions. All right, the
Abstain,
motion.
Ed, simply because I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, Ed abstains. The motion carries with 1 abstention. There's nothing on the special appropriations agenda, and there's nothing on the transfer agenda. There is, however, an item on the other business portion of our agenda, and that has to do with two resolutions having to do with the Board of Education and a capital appropriation for a parcel of land in South Norwalk for the construction of a new pre-K to 5 neighborhood school. Mr. Mayor, this comes from your office, I assume, and then Dr. Estrella is here as well. I guess she presented something in this packet as well. So who would like to speak on the item?
I could start off and then let Dr. Estrella or Mr. Asmani follow up. This is something that's been in a work in progress for quite some time. We obviously are very committed to a South Norwalk school, neighborhood school, so that the young children can have a full educational experience in the South Norwalk area. So I would strongly recommend that this item be approved.
Linda or Dr. Estrella?
Good evening,
I'll let
everyone.
Alex go first. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you, Linda. Like the mayor articulated, this is long overdue. We've had a number of conversations with our Board of Education regarding the need of a school in South Norwalk, and we've looked, and I think the city at large has looked at many alternative options, and I think we are in a place that we're very close to moving forward in meeting this long-awaited goal of having a school in South Norwalk. We have Mike Zuba here today, if the BET wishes for us to kind of present some of the key points that were presented to the board in just describing the need and why it's so important for us to take a look at this and really consider approving this tonight because the need is there, one, and the children of Norwalk, of South Norwalk deserve it. So if it's okay with you, once Linda, if you have anything else to add, I think Mr. Suba has a presentation today that can really highlight for you what we're talking about and why this is important.
Okay. Linda, would you just speak on the resolutions on the, in fact, you know what, we haven't moved this item. Would someone care to move these items? There are 2 resolutions.
So moved.
For discussion.
Yeah,
the mayor's moving,
yeah.
and Ed Abrams has moved the items, so they've been moved. So the resolutions involve closing out 2 projects, combining those monies or those appropriations into one, which will then serve as the funding source for the new school. Is that correct?
Right, that is correct. So what we're presenting for you is a resolution for a special appropriation. The two projects had already been approved in a prior 5-year capital plan. And what we're recommending is closing out two of those projects using those funds that haven't been used for the South Norwalk School. So we're not asking for a new appropriation, but just reallocation of appropriations that have already been approved for the school. And that's what the resolution is before you. The Board of Ed at their meeting approved the resolution for $76 million. I believe the recommendation you have from the CDCFO is for $72 million, less than what we had requested. But that is it's based on studies and analysis that they had done prior towards the cost of the project. And should those costs exceed the 72, there is a process to make up that difference. And so we are fine with that proposal and recommendation from the CDCFO.
Mr. Chairman, I see Mr. Alan Lowe has his hand raised. He has
Yes.
also been very actively involved in this project,
Mhm.
and he might have some further information that could be beneficial.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alan, yes.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Alan Lowe from the City of Norwalk. And I just want to get a clarification. I don't believe the action that was read by you, Mr. Chairman, it's exactly what we're looking for. I think that action has been, the particular action is slightly worded differently. It's approved the allocation of special appropriation funds for the South Norwalk School project, which includes the acquisition of a piece of property. We are not asking money to just for buy the property. We're asking money to develop the whole project. So the
Right.
wording is a little different.
Yeah, to purchase the property and construct the school.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Is there anything else you care to add to that? Would you
No,
like to
no, thank
speak
you.
on? Oh, okay. Is there anyone from the Board of Ed or from the Norwalk schools that would like to speak on it? Anyone else?
I think,
I believe Dr. Estrella.
yeah, Dr. Estrella mentioned that Mike Zuba has a presentation that
Yeah.
is prepared to kind of help illustrate a little bit in greater detail exactly what we're trying to do.
Okay, great. I don't see him on my screen, but
Hi,
there
everybody.
he-
Hope,
yeah, hi.
can you see me now?
Yeah, I can see you.
Yeah, so I do. I have a presentation. It's the one that we presented back in the board, I believe back in the middle of November or so, and had some lengthy discussions on just what it looks like for a new South and Norwalk school. If I'm able to, I'd love to be able to share my screen and kind of walk through the highlights. And I think as I walk through this, if there's any questions in any particular area, just feel free to raise a hand or give a shout out, and we could have some discussions to provide any clarifications. I'm going to do my best to provide an overview as briefly as possible, but it was about 14, 15 months of work that we've been at it to develop this final option. So with that, I'll begin sharing my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that. So as part of this process, it began last in really the winter of 2020 into the spring of 2020, where we began looking at different options to be able to provide not only a school in South Norwalk, but as part of the overall master planning effort that was going on for all the schools, and looking at the capital needs, looking at the educational vision to align the strategies of this particular project with that larger master plan. So as you can see, we've narrowed it down, and really scenario 8B is the one that is the one that's captured in the resolution that you have in front of you tonight. And just to touch on a little bit of the background, really, as we looked at being able to develop the school in South Norwalk, it was really setting up the parameters for that, understanding that equity for South Norwalk students was a big component of that, improving access for not only students, but the communities and families there to have a school within the neighborhood and provide opportunities more globally for greater pre-K opportunities, not only in South Norwalk, but really throughout the city as part of this process. So we really began with elimination of a lot of the unassigned areas that are in South Norwalk. As I'll touch on in a few slides, historically, the children of South Norwalk have been bused to schools that are really throughout Norwalk itself, through these satellite patterns, as well as these unassigned attendance zones. And that was really the crux of what we were trying to accomplish, was to put an end to that sort of busing all over the city itself and provide educational opportunities that are within the neighborhoods themselves. So what we really ran through, and I know we're on 8B, we ran through a lot of different options with a lot of different feedback, going back to public meetings back in the spring of 2020 and running those throughout the fall, getting input, working hand in hand with the administrators and the board. We had it really kind of narrowed down to really two options. We called it 8A and 8B, with 8B closely aligning, and I know the enrollment numbers are a little bit different as you begin to draft the net spec. So this is just a planning number of about 640 K-5 students. One of the other big components of this option 8B was the having the CMS program being located, I believe, starting in 22-23 into the Finnish Lower Ponus School. So that would then, provide 450 seats within the Lower Ponus that's dedicated to that CMS program there. Also, as part of it, we looked at larger options to really reduce the amount of overall impact and redistricting by looking at ways to be able to provide greater magnet and choice opportunities, not only at the elementary level, but also at the middle school level, and realizing the visions there to be able to do that. So that's really looking at phasing that in over the course of several years once the construction is complete. So what this map represents was just our take on sort of defining a South Norwalk neighborhood. And I know when you look at a map, it's defined differently. We looked at it as really those areas that don't have a true identity or definition of where they go to school. So when you look at a student attendance zone map like we have on the right here, where you see these large blocks of contiguous colors, those represent a catchment area that draws students into that school. So you look off to the left and we have this large blue area that represents Brookside. To the south, we have this large sort of light orange peach area that represents Rowayton. And then as you look inside this hard black box that we've created, you see all these different colors. What those different colors represent are satellite zones for schools outside of the South Norwalk neighborhood. So where we have this darker blue or almost navy color right here, that's representing students that live in South Norwalk and go to Cranberry. Where we have the purple color, that represents students that are satellited over to Tracy. Red is Wolf Pit, brown is Silver Mine, so on and so forth. Orange is Narramick. So we have a lot of those satellite zones that have been created years and years ago that were part of diversity balance, enrollment balancing. And then we also have these gray areas which don't have an attendance zone. So if a family moves into a neighborhood, as I'm showing here, tracing it with my pointer shown in gray, it was really historically at the discretion of the administration of where there's space, where there's availability on where those students get placed. So they've been known as sort of the 99 or those unassigned areas. And there's quite a number of students coming out of there. When we looked at the overall elementary enrollment within this sort of black box, for lack of a better term, we had 800 K-5 students residing in the South Norwalk neighborhood, and we had 400 6th through 8th grade students or middle school students residing in that area. So 1,200 students are coming out of just a small, compact area. Going through the analysis of looking at exactly the students that live in that neighborhood and where they attend, when we went through that, we found large numbers of students corresponding to those colored zones that I showed, where we had large numbers of students that are satellited out or not placed in a district, about 110, 113 going to Cranberry, 125 going to Kendall, 110 going to Rowayton, 70 some going to Narramick, 95 to Silver Mine, 92 to Wolf Pit. So on all told, they equal to just over 800 students. So as we were looking at options, we were trying to balance what was available in the and what the budget would be for a new school while still trying to provide seats for all the students within the South Norwalk zone. And we came up with this seat deficit, or this need of about 170 students if we went ahead with the scenario 8B, which builds that K-5 elementary school within South Norwalk neighborhood. And that really was the best option, because through a combination of the school that's to be built, as well as some of the existing magnet programs and the future magnet and choice programs, it was really able to provide opportunities to all the students there and be able to do away with all of that satelliting and unassigned zones. So here's where we're at today on the right, just really a fragmented zoning of students. And here's where we're looking to go on the left, is through the creation of this new elementary school. It'll have a cohesive attendance zone similar to all the other cohesive attendance zones and neighborhood catchments that are throughout Norwalk itself. Part of our charge here, and we looked at many different options, was to really eliminate or limit the overall redistricting impact, so that forced movement of students that are outside of that South Norwalk zone. And some options we looked at had a very large redistricting component. For those that have followed along, I know several of the ones we had put forth in the spring, we're looking at anywhere between 20-25% and a third of the students of Norwalk being redistricted. I think this option does redistrict a number of South Norwalk students, but only about 2% of the students outside of South Norwalk are impacted. So this one actually had the least amount of impact. And I think the reason that the reason we're looking at having a larger redistricting and trying to minimize that is just for the number of years and the way the system was set up. South Norwalk fed enrollment to so many of the schools throughout the district that once we did away with that satellite zoning, it had an impact on the overall enrollment numbers throughout all the other buildings in the system. So we wanted to be able to go back and rebalance the overall utilization there, ensure that the seat count was right, ensure that all the major parameters were correct as part of it. So when we looked at it, and knowing that there's a large building project in the works that's actually in process construction there at Cranberry, we needed to be able to replace some of the students that we took out from the South Norwalk feed up to Cranberry, and we did that as part of a redistricting from Wolf Pit to Cranberry. And this actually serves several purposes, and one of the benefits of that was to provide additional space within Wolf Pit itself in order for it to become a more robust choice or magnet program. So by having students move directly from Wolf Pit to Cranberry, we're sustaining the enrollment at Cranberry, but we're also now providing seats and opportunities for the students there. So overall, that was one of those strategic moves that we had in the works to be able to better balance enrollment out. And I think at the end of the day, and these are just sort of concepts based on the redistricting and some concepts based on the number of students that would be moved as part of choice and magnet programs, we were able to achieve a 91% utilization across all K-5 schools. All the schools themselves are fairly closely banded. So we don't have a large discrepancy between those that are highly utilized versus those that or a little bit more modestly utilized, but all the schools are well within that healthy banding of percentage of we always strive for mid 80s to mid 90s. Some of the magnets themselves are pushing a little bit higher, but that's just due to the nature of the program. The South Norwalk school that we're proposing, we know that there's 800 students there, so of course just based on the demographics there, that was nearly 100% full itself. We also looked at being able to have a number of the students that traditionally opt out of Silvermine due to the dual language program there. Those students, about 80 of them historically have opted out. They would move over to Cranberry directly in order to help Cranberry hit their enrollment target, which is about 450 to 460. We also looked at being able to have some of the students coming out of South Norwalk to attend that Wolf Pit magnet, that future magnet program there. So that redistricting I pointed out in that one area from Wolf Pit to Cranberry allows for some of those additional students from South Norwalk to attend that school. And then we had a historic share of students who naturally went from South Norwalk to Silvermine. We kept those in place to ensure that even though, we have a need of about 800, we're building a school of about 650 for the K-5, that every student gets accounted for as part of this analysis. And overall, it does a pretty good job of balancing enrollment, especially with the district being at 75% overall. That changes the threshold slightly, but we wanted to be ensure that, at least in the State Board of Ed eyes, that we are in compliance there by looking at these by looking at these preliminary numbers. And last but not least, through the infusion of the additional 6-8 seats through the CMS magnet at Lower Ponus, it does help with the utilization there. I know the last number on that was about 99%. The 130 additional seats brings that overall down to about 95%. And I do know that there were several options or opportunities put forth in the DLR Newman master plan from the springtime that looks at ways of being able to strategically infuse space where it's needed at the middle school based on some of the improvements they identified both physically and educationally there. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to the BET to see if there's any specific questions on anything that I covered, or Dr. Estrella wants to point out anything additional that I may have glanced over tonight to be able to bring that forth as part of the conversation. Happy to do so.
Thank you, Michael.
Yep.
I do have a question, and I'm not sure that this this requires a specific answer. In other words, well, my question is, has the location been identified? And I can understand if it's not something that's subject to disclosure at this point, but has a location been identified?
The location has been identified, but is not subject for further conversation at this time.
Got it. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Yes, I had a question. What happens to the New Columbus School and the Global Academy now that we take that $76 million away from them? Does that just get more or less absorbed into the new school in South Norwalk?
So the we approved to move the Columbus School to the new Ponus lower elementary building in the Ponus campus. So they will be relocated to a new building. So we wouldn't need to build a new facility for CMS. And the South Norwalk School would be occupying a larger population of students than originally and calculated, so that it would accommodate the need for South Norwalk. So the funds are being utilized to build a larger school that would accommodate the student population in South Norwalk. And even then, we still have approximately, and Mike helped me with the number because I know it was updated, over 171 students, I believe, that would have to potentially engage in the magnet programs across the district, because even with the current size for the school that we are projecting, we still wouldn't have 100% of the seats that we need in South Norwalk. But that's not a bad thing because we want to provide student choice, and just by the mere fact of parent deciding to go into magnet school programs, we will have students diffusing into other programs throughout the district anyway.
Dr. Estrella, that was exactly right. It was about 170. I think that number is going to move each year, but that's where I was touching on some of the key components of freeing up space where you want to have some greater choice seats available. So I think part of it's going to be providing opportunities for those that maybe have greater interest outside of the neighborhood school, and how best to be able to draw students out rather than do a more sort of a redistricting or something that's an involuntary move rather than a voluntary move.
And then the Global Academy, same thing? What happens with that one?
The Global Academy was originally what they were anticipating to be the South Norwalk School. We're not calling it the Global Academy at this time because one of the things that we heard from the community was that they didn't have a choice in deciding the theme or focus of the school. And we want to give the community an opportunity, once we get the approval to move forward, to be part of the process in terms of what theme or focus they want the new school in South Norwalk to be. So we didn't want to identify it as the Global Academy because the community didn't feel that that might have been the best way to meet the needs of the community at the time. And we want to make sure we give them an opportunity to have choice in deciding what the focus of the new South Norwalk school is going to be.
So forgive me, but I don't recall what the whole target of the Global Academy was going to be. So I would think that there would be some support for the original Global Academy. What are people going to be disappointed about that?
I don't think so. Because the Global's Academy's target was South Norwalk, and that's what we're doing with this new school. I think what we're not doing right now is identifying it with a particular focus. Originally, the focus was intended to be that Global Academy will be an international baccalaureate, something that we cannot do immediately anyway in any school, because under the IB guidelines, you need a school to exist for a minimum of 4 years before you can even apply to be an international baccalaureate program. So we would have to work with the community to see what focus, if they want to have a science focus, if they want to continue with the IB focus, which was the original theme that Global Academy was targeted to be, or if there's any other area that they feel that the students could benefit from when the new school is built.
Okay. So in other words, the Global Academy goes away, and it's being replaced by the South Norwalk School. So it's really just kind of repurposing or reconfiguring what that Global Academy is. And then also additionally taking the savings from what was going to be a rebuilt, I guess was either rebuilt or there was some question about rebuilding or starting from scratch for the new Columbus School. Is that right?
That is correct.
So, okay.
Are there any other questions? Okay, Madam Clerk, would you mind reading the first resolution, and then we can vote on that, and then we can proceed to the second resolution?
Okay, resolution is close out of project number 0918-5017-C0607, which is the new Columbus School at Ely Avenue, and project number 0919-5017-C0618, and project number 0920-5017-C0618, Norwalk Global Studies.
Okay. All in favor of the resolution as the clerk has read it, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion carries and the resolution has been adopted. Madam Clerk, would you mind reading resolution number 2?
Resolution number 2, requesting a special capital appropriation in the amount of $72 million to purchase the property and construct a new neighborhood school in South Norwalk to accommodate 682 pre-K to 5 students.
Okay, all in favor of that resolution as it has been read, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion carries and the two resolutions have been approved. I think that is it for that business.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just have, I know we have Mr. Dakowitz here, and he would like to introduce the new budget director to the Board of Estimate and Taxation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dakowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Camacho. I wanted to introduce Tom Ellis is our new budget director. Today is his first day. Started at 9. I want him to know he works 10 to 12 hours a day. He's always there to serve us. Tom, maybe you
So he's
can-
part-time.
That's part-time, half a day. And Tom, why don't you just explain a little bit about your background?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the welcome. Good evening. I spent the last few years in the municipal world. I came from, I was the finance director at the town of Bethany, Connecticut. And prior to that, spent a couple of years in Greenwich in a finance function for the city. And then before that, I was in big banking, a lot of the big global banks for many, many years, some of it in New York City and some of it in Stamford, including Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, the investment banking arm of that. And my last stint in the private sector was with RBS, which is now NatWest Markets. I'm a Norwalk resident. I live not too far from Town Hall. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity and the challenge here.
And you have
Thank
a
you.
child in the school.
Say
What's
again?
that? You have a child in the school?
And you have a child in the school.
Yes, I do. I have a 5th grader at Marvin.
Great. Well, very good.
Mr. Chairman,
Very glad to meet you and to have you aboard.
And
we
I'm,
went on a
oh,
we
sorry.
went on a nationwide search and narrowed it down to 2 finalists. Mr. Ellis was the final choice, but it just goes to, again, our policy of reaching out and trying to bring the best people into Norwalk to help work through the city, help get things done with new ideas, new thoughts, new visions, and bringing us into the future.
Great. Wonderful.
And I
Thank you.
noticed one of the board members is a fellow Norwalk High marching band parent.
Yeah, good to see you again, Tom. Congratulations on the new role.
Yes.
That's great. All right. Well, very good.
Welcome
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
If the BT doesn't further need us, I just want to thank everyone for approving this. I think the South Norwalk community will highly appreciate this as we continue to move forward in putting this application forward to the state. So just wanted to say good evening and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Everybody.
Estrella, for your hard work and all your team. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. All right. So I think we just have the information section left to go on the agenda. And as usual, the Oak Hills financial status is up. And I see that, I thought I saw that Mike DePalma was on.
I am here.
Yes. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
Good. Do you have anything? If I see the spreadsheet, the QuickBooks Excel or a spreadsheet, but do you have anything? Could you summarize where we are?
Yeah, I mean, pretty straightforward. It's the off season. We did come in a little above budget. We came ahead of the curve. We got some rounds early on in November. So good cash on hand, although the cash on hand as of November 30th is down significantly now because we paid out the cart path, the continuous cart path, which was completed in December. So that's a good sign, which will start generating revenue. The only other pieces, we approved the new rates. We did approve, it was a pretty close vote, but we did approve the seasonal passes again for next year. There was a very small hike to the rate, $1 per round, which is below inflation. But other than that, pretty straightforward. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I had one question, Mike. Last month, we talked about when we were discussing the compensation round, not the compensation rounds, the comp rounds that we'd given out. And there was some confusion over are we getting reimbursed for rounds that are booked through the booking website?
Yeah, so in my conversations with Paul and Mark and Joe, they're not being reimbursed. So it's not being tracked as a bookable round. It's part of kind of the agreement for that booking agency. We did get rid of all the other barter rounds. We've made it pretty clear with the superintendent, but for whatever reason, this is how kind of business is done on the golf course world in terms of that
So
comp round.
I'm just confused about this
Mhm.
because we're giving, let's pick a number. We give 100 rounds to the booking company and they get the revenue, whatever revenue they want to charge, they get that revenue and we don't get anything.
That's how I understand it, based on my conversation with Paul. I know Joe had addressed, I guess he was waiting on a couple of questions as well, but that's how he conveyed it to me, unless I'm misunderstanding it. Yeah. But that apparently is standard practice. It was kind of news to me, but
so
yeah.
there's got to be, I just can't believe that we would give those away and not get any compensation. Is it limited and it costs us the equivalent of 100 rounds to have them book rounds for us?
That's how Paul explained it to me, that we would essentially be paying this money anyway. So it would be, instead of us paying the money, it's paid in these comp rounds. So does that make sense? So that's just kind of how the compensation traditionally works on that. So it would be an expense line on our bottom line.
Why bother even doing it?
That's just how these companies operate. That's how I was told. I mean, we could try to look for another company to do it. And I could ask Paul about that.
I'm just curious.
No,
why would you do it? It's if we don't get anything out of it, and if I go and book through that booking service, is that the last time I can do it? Is that the only time I can do it? Because I'd go back every week. I'll go book my golf through that booking service every week, and the golf course is never going to get anything, and I'll pay the same price.
Yeah,
I mean, what I'm saying? I'm just kind of confused about the whole thing.
I do, and maybe maybe it'd be best to just have Paul come on next month and explain it, since he's the one in the weeds. I think that would be helpful because it's confusing to me. Paul's our golf pro.
Yeah.
I think
because when he explains it, it sounds relatively simple, but I agree with you. I have the same type questions.
Well, I think what would help, Mike and Jim, if we could look at what the revenue would be with those 100 rounds, and are we paying anything to the booking service above and beyond those? And it looks so that we can get a whole picture as to what it's actually costing us versus what we would receive if we had those 100 rounds ourselves. And are we paying anything above and beyond those 100 rounds?
Yeah, because I honestly, I don't disagree with the fact that we would have to pay to have somebody else book those rounds for us. But, or is there a way to track repeat customers that come back and don't go through that booking place? Okay. So it just seems like we're giving away 100 rounds of golf and not collecting any money. And that guy who's booking the rounds for us is collecting money. So
and I believe we can
guess
track
it's just a little confusion. And I think you've said the same things I do, and as the mayor does.
Right, and we can track it. So we will be able to track who books through what, which kind of avenue they go through to book. So I know they can be tracked. I just know Mark, our controller, is super granular with this stuff, and he didn't seem to be overly concerned. He thought that financially this made sense, but I'm with you. I think, we could either get Mark and or Paul on here, probably Paul, because he'll understand. He'll be able to explain it in layman's terms, probably a little bit better than I will.
Okay, I'd appreciate it, because I don't know if anybody, other members of the board feel that same way, but I'm just confused by the whole thing.
This is Troy. I agree with you 100%, Jim. In a perfect world, those booking services would, if you had extra rounds that you weren't using, you would send them over to them, and then they would discount it, and then you would get a portion of it. That's what I thought that was set up for. But if you're giving priority round times to people, giving them a lower price, Jim's right. Why wouldn't we all just book it on for the cheaper on the site? So I don't know. You gotta clarify that. And my other two questions are how's the unlimited pass is coming. I know I saw that come up. I did get one, but I'm just curious how that's going.
Yep. So
Do
we've,
you
I
have
know,
a time limit and an amount that you're limiting it to?
yeah, we did reduce the amount of passes from 75 to 50. As of last week, it was at 31 we had sold already. I'll check with Paul. That was mid last week was the last time I got an update on it, but it was a flurry of them right up front. And I don't anticipate us not getting the 50. I think it'll probably be the opposite. We'll probably have some folks that are frustrated that we limited to 50, but that was part of the negotiation. If anybody listened to the meeting, I had some personal problems with the season passes, but I think 50 it does alleviate some of the problems of people not getting tea times to some extent.
So 50 is both for all the categories total?
All the categories, yeah, that includes resident, non-resident. Yep. It could be the thing with it is it could be 52. There's no way we can cut. We can only cut it off at the end of the day. So at some point, if we get a flood of them, we might get 54, something like that.
When's the cutoff date?
There isn't a cutoff date to it. So
you're just going to go up to the number.
You were just going to get till we get to 50, yeah.
And I ask again, the restaurant, where are we with that?
We have everything in line. We got on the 17th, we got the building permit. We were planning on an opening, but with everything that's going on right now, it is open for private bookings, but we made the decision not to open because of the spike in COVID, and it's just not a good business decision to open any restaurant right now. But it is there. You can go to their website. They got pictures of the food. It's beautiful. Everything on the approval side, everything is good. We have the CO in hand, and so we're good.
So you're looking maybe for April 1st is probably the target date, or?
Yeah, what we were thinking was do something where we invite folks from City Hall, Council, you folks down there, and then kind of thrown around the idea of sometime in mid-March, maybe something around, St. Patrick's Day or March Madness or something, just as to get folks down there. But yeah, it'll be probably mid-March when we have a full opening. But if things clear up, it'll be, we're ready to start generating revenue from it. So if things open up, it could be February.
Great. Good luck.
Thank you. We're
Yeah,
excited.
good.
Is there anything else? Mr. Dakowitz, would you like to speak on any of the other items? There's the tax collection and stuff like that, or just a general snapshot?
Thank you. I review the weekly cash flow numbers from the tax collection office. It's holding up well. We now have 93 weeks that we've looked at, starting with March of 20, when COVID started. And we're up 4.4%, which kind of makes sense based on the tax rates and what we've done. So knock on wood, that's holding up nicely. I would say probably no other comments at this time.
Henry, could you, we had a conversation today when we were meeting with Tom Ellis. Could you just mention the pension and
Yes.
the OPEB that you talked about today?
Right. Over the weekend, the controller, Chisme Lamb, and I reviewed the draft consolidated annual financial report, which includes the audit, at 160 pages. One of the most gratifying areas was regarding the pension and the OPEB. Because of demographics and a phenomenal investment return for this fiscal year ending June 30, the pension plans, we have 4 of them, as you recall: the police, the fire, the food workers, and the city employees. When I look at them collectively, they are 90% funded. The liability has gone down a little, the assets have grown tremendously. And the OPEB trust, I'll point out, the last time I looked, half of the cities in Connecticut don't even have an OPEB trust. And usually the priority is funding the pension rather than the OPEB, the post-employment healthcare. Again, because of an excellent investment return, and I have to thank my friends on the pension board who manage that, we are at over 100% funded on the OPEB fund trust. Now, it can go down, changing demographics, early retirements, things like that. The liability can go up, investment returns can be negative, and the assets go down. But compared to many most other governments. I think we're sitting very well, and that's an area that I know that the rating agencies focus on, and they will be very pleased with that. So I guess the mayor wanted me to share good news as soon as I had it.
That's great news.
Ed,
Whenever
can I-
we have good news, we would like to share it because oftentimes maybe the news wouldn't be so good, but we're very pleased. And I want to thank Henry and certainly Chitsame and the whole finance department. And Tom, I know you're coming into a good situation and just make it better.
Ed, can I just ask one quick question for the mayor?
Sure.
I'm just curious, Mayor, is there any thought, I went by Veterans Park again this afternoon, and I noticed the lines for the testing. Is there any thought of maybe opening the NCC site again, or I'm just curious where we are for the testing?
Well, the testing, the problem is we only have so many human resources that we can use, the staffing, and they only get, probably because the testing is being done by semaphore, they only get 500 per day. We're talking about the possibility of opening up another site just to reduce the lines at either site so that, you know, the size of the crowd would be split in two. There's been a huge increase in the demand for testing. As you probably have read, tomorrow evening, we're going to be handing out the self-tests that we got from the state of Connecticut. We didn't get anywhere near the number we expected, and we didn't get anywhere near the number that would adequately serve the city. So hopefully, if nothing else, the people that get the self-tests might not be ready to go into line and wait 5 and 6 hours. We're getting people for testing that starts at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, where they're showing up at 8 o'clock in the morning and waiting in line. It's been a huge surge, but we're doing the best we can. Hopefully, if we can right now increase the number of tests we can get, that'd be great. But so far, that's not been the case.
I know that my daughter went down to get tested at Vets Park before New Year's and came back and told me that the police and the other people that were handling the crowds were really stretched to the limit. As a matter of fact, a lot of people didn't understand what the police were saying. My daughter stepped in and did some Spanish explanations of what was going on, but she said that it was really, pushing everybody who was down there assigned to that scene, really pushing them to the limit. So it's quite a situation.
It is, and with people showing up so early, the line actually backed all the way around Vets Park, over a Straffolino Bridge, all the way down Water Street and up onto Quintard Avenue. And so I've told the police department that we make an announcement that the gate to Vets Park will be closed. If there's testing at 3 o'clock, we're going to open the gate at 1, and people can then start coming in. If prior to that, if anybody stops on the bridge or down Water Street, they're to be moved along and say they can't be stopping there because they're blocking an entire lane of traffic. So far that's been relatively good, and the police are opening up the line and then having stacks of cars, rows of cars in order, and then they let them through, one row at a time. So it's been a little bit better, but certainly very challenging to the police, and I give them a lot of credit. They're doing really great job with limited resources.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this going to inevitably result in a shortfall in the police budget, since this is sort of extra unanticipated work?
Very well could be, because we're hopefully getting reimbursed for some of the overtime expenditures. We're hoping we can do that or get that. There may be, Henry, you can add, there may be some ARPA opportunities here or whatever, but we want to make sure that we have the proper coverage, because quite frankly, some people can be very aggressive, very rude to the officers. and is just a very chaotic situation. And the officer, like I said, I give the officers a lot of credit, not only for the ability to control the lines and make some sort of pattern out of it, but also to be very patient and very understanding of the people that are waiting for 6-7 hours only to get up to the front of the line and say there's no testing.
I would just address that, Ed, as saying, again, I'm working in 3 different years, last year's audit, the current year, and next year with the budget. But for the current year, that's why we set aside contingency. And we do have pockets of money, as the mayor indicated. We have ARPA, we've gotten COVID relief in the past. So given our nature, one of Tom's roles is checking budget versus actual. And if we have problems, as you're aware, we often come to you people and say, let's make a budget transfer. They have overtime or whatever need in the police department, and we take it out of either contingency or another line item that's running a surplus. So I think net, looking at the entire budget, I think we're okay. But certainly for planning for next year, certainly after 2 years of COVID, I would have expected that we're out of the woods with this latest spike. We may have to go back to a more cautious mode.
Understood. All right. Is there anything else? Motion to
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank
Happy
you
New
all.
Night all.
Thank
Yeah,
you
Happy
all.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.